Hi, I'm Adam,
Hi, I'm Tim.
and this is
Perspectives
Perspectives in
in
Coffee.
Coffee.
Ah, la, la, la. So, welcome to our first Perspectives in Coffee. My name's Adam, and I am the founder of Rock Coffee Company and the lead trainer at Howto Coffee Pro. So today, I'm really pleased we have a special guest, and we're going to cover some hot topics. A lot of learners have asked me, what's the difference between Q courses and SCA sensory courses? We have a Q grader with us to talk about SCA, CQI, and we're just going to have a lot of fun. So if this is your first time tuning in, welcome to the community. This is a coffee playground where I hope you can learn and grow and make your life better using coffee. So make sure to tune in to the end. We are going to have some special announcements. We might inform you along the way too, sprinkle them in here and there about some upcoming courses, some discounts. So you'll definitely want to tune in for those. If you haven't already, you can follow. You can join at rock.coffee or howtocoffeepro.com. Subscribe, like, comment in this video, and share, because it's a great way to get the word out. And it really helps. Okay, enough. So I'm really excited to have my good friend. He's like a little big brother to me. Tim, who are you? Where are you? And why do you do coffee?
Yeah, thanks. I'm excited to be here. So my name is Tim Heinze. Currently, I serve as the coffee education manager for Sucafina, and have been in coffee since 2009. Kind of stumbled down the rabbit hole that is coffee. I was working in and living in southern China, which is where I met Adam as well for the first time. We both, Americans from the US that met in China. So yeah, good times. And I was working in development work, actually working in water education and health development, and stumbled into coffee growing communities and began this crazy journey of kind of the intersection of development and industry, which was a really fascinating kind of point to jump into coffee. Do not come from an ag or kind of coffee farming background, but more so an education background, and began working with coffee farmers. We started worked in a roasted coffee company, and then started an export company, and began diving deeper and deeper into just understanding coffee better, really from a production, processing, trading side. I tell people I can turn coffee brown and I can draw a pretty heart in a latte, but I don't call myself a roaster and I don't call myself a barista. And so, while I can, again, I can kind of manage around that side, I definitely focus more on the producing side of the industry. I've had the really great honor of working with coffee producers throughout Southeast Asia, throughout East Africa, and have really just enjoyed those moments of being able to learn together. And I love what you said about it kind of being a playground, and such a great image of just kind of learning and sharing experiences and growing together. In my role at Sucafina, I not only support our teams across the world, working at producing countries and kind of in consuming markets as well, but the last 3 months, I've been really focused on the launch of what is an external, an online learning community hosted at thecenter.coffee. So the center is an online learning community focused on providing high quality, relevant, and accessible online courses for the global coffee industry. So we have a podcast there. We have some other things, and we could talk about some of that later. But I've been excited about the work and the effort being gone into developing those programs. I currently reside in the southern U.S. I'm in Houston, Texas. I did not think that I would be here, which I'm sure lots of people over the last 2 years can say that same thing. I think the "but COVID" kind of thing expression has definitely surfaced multiple times. But my family is here, and it's been a great opportunity to reconnect with friends in coffee in this part of the world, and really looking forward to our discussion today.
Yeah, awesome. Uh, I know that you could spend a long time telling us about all the places you've traveled and all the awesome companies, the people, the roasters, the growers that you've worked with. So maybe you can sprinkle that in as we go along here. Um, I didn't know you weren't from an education or a agricultural background. It makes sense you're from an educational background because you've done so much with training. And that's really what brought us together. Like you said, we met in China. It wasn't just two foreigners walking around that giant landmass bumping into each other, but I was flying down to southern China, Yunnan, where you were at the time. You were working with farmers, processing all kinds of cool projects down there. And I was finishing my SCA courses. So I was getting my professionals and getting certified as an AST. So education brought us together. And man, I don't know how long it's been. I don't want to think about it right now. But
Not important. It's not important.
yeah, education still held us together and it brought us here today. So I am super excited. I've tried multiple times to take a Q grader course with you, and I think it's going to happen this January 2022. Okay, so New Year's goals, Q grader. Let's check it off in January just so that the rest of the year it's good. But how do I prepare? What is a Q course? Like I've done sensory, I've taught sensory, for the SCA perspective, but I'm really curious, like how do you introduce the Q grader program for people? And it's Q Arabica. I know that there's other programs within CQI, the Coffee Quality Institute, but I would love our learners to understand just how do you as a trainer introduce the Q program?
Yeah, no, it's a great question, and interestingly enough, even CQI is going through a season of kind of change and advancing some of the programs and courses and stuff that they do. I think kind of when we look at the Q Grader program and both Q Arabica and Q Robusta, um, we're really talking about a certification that essentially certifies a skill that you possess. So we think about, I mean, this course has been going on for decades, and I think the state of the coffee industry, particularly specialty coffee industry, was a little different back then in terms of you had people that had different experiences and people that had
Mm-hmm.
been in coffee for a long time. But really, what the Q Grader program was about was certifying a skill that you had in sensory. And what we're finding now, because of developing markets like you find in Southeast Asia,
Mm-hmm.
like you find in producing countries, as well as people getting into coffee as a professional career, people are wanting opportunities to learn and to develop those skills, and then having certificates, kind of a stamp of approval that
Right.
they've kind of gained a level of achievement within that particular skill set. And
Mm-hmm.
so some of the changes and some of the, I guess, additions and kind of advancements that CQI is seeing in their course offerings is trying to maintain the Q Grader course as that kind of process of certifying a skill, while at the same time introducing courses, or what they're also calling classes, that are about developing those skills and working to, whether developing from a place of not having any skill or not having any experience, or kind of preparing people for that type of a certification. And so, the CQI Q Grader certificate has become very well known in the industry. CQI and the Q Grader program is well known, but what's not always known is some of the other projects and some of the other things that CQI does. You have the Q processing program, which is relatively new.
Mm-hmm.
I've had an awesome opportunity to be a part of helping with developing some of that curriculum and that material, and then the Q Robusta program, which is relatively new as well, and
Mm-hmm.
the release of the Fine Robusta Standard by CQI, and some other development projects that they do kind of all over the world. So kind of the Q Grader gets I guess, the most airtime, so to say, in terms of what CQI becomes really known for, has become
Hmm.
what CQI
Hmm.
is really known for. But there are other programs and other projects that they do that are really exciting.
And when did Q start? Like when was it? Was it in the
Ooh.
90s?
Yeah, it's like mid 90s. I believe it
Yeah.
was 96. I want to
Yeah.
say. I should know that as an instructor. Like you think that'd be kind of something that I'm
That
sure it's
wasn't
on a
on.
I'm sure it's in the notes of a PowerPoint slide somewhere that
Yeah.
like I've seen 100 times that I just kind of missed. But at 95, 96, I believe is kind of when CQI started
Right.
and the program started.
I um I'm really excited about the developments there. And it's always been kind of that stamp of approval for sensory. I've shared with my learners so many times, SCA learners and graduates, that um, and I could be a little wrong in this, but I would often tell them like the Q is kind of like getting a PhD, whereas all of your SCA certification is like getting an MBA and or master's, right? And so a lot of times you get a master's degree and it tends to be very actionable, but when you're trying to get a job or when you put some letters after your signature, that Q just pops out. Like if you were a PhD, that it just speaks more highly.
No, it's good. It's good. It's all good. It was intentional, I'm sure. Just
keep
keep me honest. That's what it
keep it
was.
loose. I got to keep you on your toes. So let's look specifically now at the difference between like me attending a Q versus me attending a SCA intermediate or professional certification exam. So I was looking online at various websites, and it looks like the Q Greater Arabica has 19 different tests. There's sensory tests, and then there's some hands-on tests. So why don't you just run us through
Yeah.
real quick? We don't have 6 days to run through it, but the course takes like 6 days, right? And so kind
Yeah.
of what are we doing? What does a typical 6-day course look like if we were to join you in January or March in your
Yeah.
upcoming courses that we're trying to plan here?
Yeah. So the Q Grader course is a 6-day course and basically consists of, on the front end, there's some instruction, kind of looking at, I want to say, practice exercises, which are not only kind of making sure that there's a consistent foundation of knowledge, but then also kind of it's a stressful time. I'll just be honest.
Mm-hmm.
It's stressful, and my job as an instructor, as I approach a Q Grader course, is try to make it as non-stressful as possible, while still
Right.
maintaining the integrity of the course, of the test, and the program. Oh, I don't know if you heard that thunder outside, but it's just realized it's
Yeah.
raining outside. Um, sorry about that. Um, but so it's a stressful time, and my job is to try to keep things light, make sure things are consistent, and people feel comfortable. And so the first kind of half of the course is all about trying to give people some comfort to what are the tests going to be, how are we going to do them, and but then also making sure that there's a consistent foundation of information that everybody kind of understands. So we talk
Hmm.
about kind of how we perceive different flavors, how we perceive different aromas. We talk about how some of those develop. We communicate and talk about some of the standards, like with the SCA washed Arabica grading standard for green coffee. And then the second half of the course is kind of all the tests. And there are opportunities to retake certain tests within those 6 days if you don't pass on the first attempt.
Hmm.
Some of the tests that are given can be retaken in that 6 days, others can't, just mainly for practicality reasons.
Mm-hmm.
But if you aren't able to pass, I know that we talk a lot about passing, and honestly, yes, I wish that everybody who takes a course could pass. The reality is, not everybody comes into the course with the level of skill of cupping, and so I don't think everybody should pass unless they're qualified,
Mm-hmm.
unless they are able to show that they've received or that they've achieved that certain skill set. And so, you get people that talk about the percentage of people that pass in the first go or have to retake. I don't really think those things are important, to be quite direct or quite honest.
Sure.
My ultimate goal is that people learn, that they advance their skills, they advance their knowledge, that they develop as a professional, during that experience. And yes, a good majority of the people have to go back at some point and retake one or two tests at a different time.
Okay.
It's not as common to have somebody kind of pass all of the exams, all of the even with the retake, during that 6 days.
Hmm.
It does happen, and there are people that do, particularly those that have lots of experience cupping or have been, whether it's through taking SCA sensory courses or whether it's through their job,
Right.
they're in a position where they have that skill and they've worked to develop that skill.
Right. Right. Yeah. When I was looking at the test, it doesn't look too dissimilar from an SCA intermediate or professional, where we have cupping test, flights and triangulations, organic acids, uh, sample roast ID, green coffee grading, olfactory test. Um, there is a coffee knowledge, 100
Yeah.
questions. There's an exam as well. Okay.
Yeah.
And is
So,
that
and then
now in the course, or is that an online afterward? Have they moved to that yet? Like the SCA moved all their exams, and you can do it within 2 weeks of taking your practical, which is cool. So
yeah.
what's the exam look like?
So the general knowledge exam, the 100 question, is taken on site, during those 6 days. It consists of a combination. About 80% of the information is from the presentations and the PowerPoints that are, shared during the course. There's
Mm,
about 20% that's kind of just general coffee knowledge.
okay.
Which country is the largest producing country of the world, or it's general. Where do we attribute coffee arabica to originate from? I mean, it's very
It's pretty
general.
simple. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's not detailed type of information. And one of the things that I do is I do in my courses, I'll do a review on some material, and I like to make it fun. There's a website called Kahoot, if anybody's ever used it, but it's like you can create kind of interactive games and trivia, things like that. And so
Mm,
I try to do something like that just to make it fun, because while yes, I want to maintain the integrity of the test, I also know that personally, I hate multiple choice tests. I'm such an analytical person. I'm like, well, it could be this. Like, I could think of
yeah.
an instance where
Yeah.
it could be that answer or it could be this answer. And my wife, on the other hand, is the one that she's like, no, you need to pick the most right answer. And I'm like,
Yeah. Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
subjective. Like, who's most right? I think I'm pretty right in these instances. So
Yeah.
in order to try to help people that would be similar to myself that might struggle with multiple choice tests, I do that review, and it's all multiple choice, and it is one of the adjustments we've made in recent years to this general knowledge exam is that, um, unfortunately, apparently, previous copies of the exam
Oh,
found their
certainly.
way onto the World Wide Web,
Certainly.
and so and so we have adjusted, and basically the instructor has a pool of about 300 questions to
Hmm.
where we build our own exam for each individual course. And it just helps, again, maintain the
Hmm.
integrity of
Hmm.
the content and proving the skill. I will mention as well, one of the tests that you didn't mention is the sensory, which was my like least favorite whenever I did the Q. That's the sour, sweet, and salt. So we do a combination of different solutions that
Yeah.
work to, I hate to say the word prove, but reinforce that you are able to perceive and understand different taste modalities and different intensities of those modalities.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
in fact, in China, the participants of the courses like to call it the devil water, and I always tell them, don't call it devil water because it won't treat you very well. But the so it's but that's another one of the other tests that we do, and all of the exams, with even with the general knowledge, having a review session and so forth, all of the exams you get kind of like a practice, so to say. So we organize not only a time to understand the skills that we're trying to assess and why we're
Hmm.
focusing on those skills, but then there's kind of practice exercise time. So
Hmm.
even the olfactory with the Linné kit and smelling the vials, we give you opportunities to
Hmm.
kind of experience what the test is like. And for me, I know that some people say, oh, well, aren't you just kind of like, giving them an opportunity to pass before they take the test? and you could look at it like that. I actually think it's about kind of putting people's nerves at ease because it is so stressful. And so when you're going into it for the first time and you only get one go at it and you're, stressing out, oh, am I doing this
Right.
right? Or where do I put the
Right.
vials? Or why are there no lights on? Why is everything red? Like it's the opportunity to just kind of calm the nerves. Here's what it's going to be like. Here's the processes so that when you do it, for the exam, you're not sidetracked by that.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Using the language of using the human as a sensory measurement tool. Like when we go into there, we're not just robotic. We're not just here to taste and smell, but we bring in, we might have had a great night's sleep, a bad night's sleep. We might have something blowing up at work back home or with the family. So there's so many stresses in the classroom when you're taking these.
Sure.
And I definitely understand your perspective as a trainer. You want to, you try to introduce your students to everything they might experience so that when they do experience it, it's really not that shocking. They can just perform. So great. You shared a lot of things in there. So I wanted to connect a few things with the SCA course.
Go for it.
I'm going to fly out after SCA Expo and do the sensory intermediate. And so we are also doing the solutions test at the intermediate level. We're doing 4 different levels of a solution that at the exam, they have to first identify what solution this is. So that's pretty simple. You can tell this is a sweet solution or this is a sour solution. And that's just stirring a certain amount of citric acid or sugar into water and dissolving it. But then we do various levels of intensity, most intense, less intense, least intense, or 4 levels of ranking intensity. It's been a while with that same crew. Next year, I'm going to do the professional sensory, but it's been a while since I ran that. I haven't done it since SCA updated, but I feel like when I took the course years ago, we actually had to blend, or we as students, we had to identify in this solution, there is both sour and bitter blended together. And we might try to guess the intensity, but we would have to identify, are there 2 or 3 solutions in this one taste in this one solution? And so do you have the intensity ranking, the identification, and the blending identification and Q?
Yeah, that's correct. So it's actually kind of a 3-part exam where we give you, we test sour, sweet, and salt. If I understand correctly, SCA might add bitter onto that. I'm not 100%
we do
sure
bitter.
on that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
it's just sour, sweet, and salt.
Caffeine powder or something else.
Okay. Yeah. So it's citric acid, table salt, and white sugar or regular sugar. We don't get too fancy on like our sugars,
Right.
We don't use artificial sweeteners. That is clear. We stick with raw sugar. But anyways, it's a 3-part exam where you have the sour, sweet, and salt at 3 different intensities, isolated. And the instructor will tell you this is salt 1, meaning lowest intensity, salt 2, and salt 3. And you have a chance to kind of calibrate. And then the next set, you're going to get a set of cups in front of you, and you have to identify which modality, sour, sweet, or salt, and what intensity, 1, 2, or 3. And it's not very complicated. It's pretty straightforward. And, sometimes you might get a duplicate, you might not, not that it's curveballs to try to mess you up, but just, again, to reinforce that the skill is being focused on. And, one of the things I tell people so many times, when you do this, you've got to get out of your head, because people start playing, games. Okay, well, I've used 8 of them and there's 9. So that means only one's left. So, I kind of become a test taker, kind of game the test as opposed to really just kind of being in the moment.
Just do it.
And then the third part is the challenging one, which is mixtures. So you have 4 solutions that have 2 modalities of different intensities, and 4 solutions of 3 modalities. Great. And you have to not only identify what is the modality, what sour, sweet, or salt, but what is the intensity of each of those modalities?
Hmm.
And we talk about kind of, you know, I hated this exam. I really struggled with this. And I remember sitting in my hotel room. I took the Q in Taiwan, and I remember sitting in my hotel room with one of my classmates, and we're like mixing solutions. I mean, it was kind of like we were pouring drinks for each other without, like, you
Yeah.
know, the enjoyment of the drink part. It was like,
Right.
you know,
The
you're trying
devil
to
water.
guess, and yeah, you're like, man, you know, it's like, is that the, you know, on the rocks? Is
Mm,
that a, you know, anyways. So it was a very challenging. And I remember, because being early in coffee, I was very confused as why this is important. Why does this
right.
matter? Like,
Right.
somebody in their sick mind decided we're really going to screw with people, and we're going to mix a bunch of things together and make sure they understand what they are.
Yeah.
But then I got into a greater understanding of processing, and how processing impacts different compounds that then contributes to complexity,
Mm,
and how complexity then correlates and connects with quality. And it was like light bulb goes off, and you're like, oh, okay, now I get it. Like, now I
hmm.
understand why that's so important. And so it definitely, and we talk, I talk about that in the course that I do and look at. I mean, we don't go into extreme depth on how we get more of those compounds, where they can,
Yeah.
but we talk about how those things, and even in the exercises, when you begin tasting the mixtures and the blends together, you realize, oh wow, yeah, that's better
Right.
tasting. Like, you know, I always use the lemon example. You know, sucking on a lemon is really sour and sharp, but if you sprinkle some salt or you put some sugar on that, it becomes actually pretty nice. You're talking about same levels of compounds, but that
Hmm.
mixture really enhances and brings together the quality. So that's kind of
Hmm.
why that's
Hmm.
an important part, because then when we begin assessing quality in coffee, we need to be able to bring that understanding of taste modalities and intensities in order to kind of appropriately evaluate the quality of the coffee.
That's a great point. It might help us transition, and then maybe just how personally. So let's take the cue personally. How have you seen some of those 6 days, that intense 6 day where you're just like sensory overload, tongue fatigue? You know, I hear people get sick because they consume so much caffeine or coffee, and I'm sure they're like hyped up stories, right? So you've had more than
So
6 years
eight
to unpack
years.
these 6 days, right? So
Yeah.
where have you seen different parts of that test pop up in a real practical
Hmm.
sense? How do they
Hmm.
continue to spill over into other courses and in your work? Um, because I also struggle with that. Like when I'm telling my learners, okay, here's how you do like three terribly planned roast. And it's like I'm training them to do these bad roast on the SCA foundation course. But it actually, like from my perspective, like I've seen roasters do this in a big roastery on 20 pounds of coffee.
Yeah.
Like I've seen that happen. So I know from my perspective. So where have you seen the Q applied on the field in the last 8 years? And how has it helped you?
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's a good question, because ultimately, like, what's the value of it, right? And is it
Mm-hmm.
valuable? Like, is it a piece of
Mm-hmm.
paper that just hangs on a wall, or, you know, a byline and a signature in an email, you know, or LinkedIn or whatever?
Right.
You know, for me, um, I I know that because of when I started in coffee, I didn't know where to go for education. I mean, I did, whenever it was the SCAA, I did a bunch of courses, and really I just kind of began pursuing this connection between what we were doing on the farm, what we were doing in processing, how how that was impacting quality, and then how the other side of the industry, the consuming side, roasters, importers, traders, etc., were evaluating, and understanding very quickly that there was a standard that was being used. And yes, I mean, and I want to be very, very transparent that I think with some of the new trends and new waves of processing and extended fermentations and all of that, there's still a lot of work we have to do as an industry to calibrate and to understand quality, but there
Mm-hmm.
still requires that consistent standard for how we evaluate and how
Mm-hmm.
we're measuring. And if you're using a different standard than I am, and
Mm-hmm.
we're arriving at different points on quality, but we're using, you know, price to trade coffee, my pursuit of the Q grader and even now in instructing the course is all about helping people, give people a consistent language, a consistent standard, a consistent way to evaluate coffee. And
Mm-hmm.
and I,
Mm-hmm.
and for in a lot of ways, for a good majority of the washed coffee in the world, which does represent a pretty significant amount within, even within specialty, I do think that the SCA cupping form, the Q grader, standard does provide a very fair way to evaluate and to objectively evaluate quality. Now, with experimental processing methods and coffees that's, people say taste like bubble gum and all these other stuff, maybe the industry, because of where those coffees are fitting in the markets across the world and the receptivity to it, maybe we need to have more opportunities to calibrate and to better understand
Mm-hmm.
how the market is rewarding or perceiving those coffees. And I even just personally, I believe that even as we begin to do that, I think we're going to find that some of those characteristics, for example, very forward acidity coffees or, you know, unique combinations of aromatics or flavors, I think we're still going to be kind of divided on how we
Mm-hmm.
reward those coffees with price,
Mm-hmm.
right? That's ultimately
Right.
the reward, right? And so I think that's where, and what we will find is a market that rewards that and maybe pays a higher price and other markets that don't. But the standard that we use and how we communicate and talk about that coffee and how we evaluate it, if it's consistent, we at least have a common framework to be able to have those conversations. So, I that's where I think the real value of the Q grader program is understanding that standard, understanding that process. I do believe there's some credibility that one gains, whether it's in getting a job, whether it's in, those that being active within that supply chain or within that exchange of conversations. But I think because of that, CQI has worked to try to
Mm-hmm.
make those courses more accessible across the supply chain, so that it isn't that power disparity that we can often find that exists between the consumer knowing more or the
Yeah.
roaster or trader knowing more than the producer. And so I
Mm-hmm.
love I love opportunities, and I've had some really cool opportunities in Myanmar and DRC and other places around the world to help train producers and farmers on evaluating and cupping their own coffees.
Yeah.
And I think the more we can do that, that's one step I think we can make in kind of balancing the scale, so to say.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I do think that you mentioned about the Q processing program and other things. I see the Q grader program really going hand in hand with processing, and I'm sure from your end, not to say that you're at the opposite end, but from the roasting side of the industry, which I know you're much more an expert in that side of the industry, sensory and the kind of standard evaluating kind of methods absolutely has impacts to how you roast coffee and how you might
Oh
change
yeah.
things or how you develop, and even looking at coffee in its green state to inform roasting, is another like important part. So, and I would say likewise from the processing side, I'm very much a proponent of better understandings of how we and consistent understandings of how we evaluate sensory as we kind of look at how coffee was processed and in different ways. And
Yeah.
as an example of that, we don't necessarily do a full sensory like a full Q grader cupping in the Q processing level 1 course, but we do a cupping protocol on evaluating 8 different methods of how the coffee was processed from one farm during one harvest year from one
Mm.
field, as a way to understand how processing can directly impact sensory characteristics in the cup. And so I do see a lot of value in it, and one of the things that I'm particularly passionate about is making it more accessible.
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
know it can be challenging, and CQI has done some work over the years to make where you can hold courses more accessible to across the world. Um, you know, I have found them to be very, very accommodating, not compromising, but accommodating in terms of providing opportunities for this course to be taught all over the world, so that we can kind of get that information out and that knowledge out to more people.
Yeah. Um, Great. Yeah, there was a lot to unpack there. But uh,
Sorry.
well, no, it's okay. Um, one of the things that you do that I admire, that I also try to do, although but COVID this last 2 years, is that you're willing to travel to location. And so you've traveled for Q grader courses, Q processing courses, and you're still open and looking to do that. And you and I are actually planning a couple courses that we're going to share real soon. Tease, hang on. Um, so how is that? Like you traveling to a place, and
Yeah.
you've been in Myanmar, you've done what courses? You were in the Philippines, I think, and you did some
Hmm.
courses. The
Hmm.
DRC. So uh how do they receive these courses? How do we, how can you, what does that look
Yeah.
like when you travel to another location? You're not just bringing them into your lab and controlled
And that
space.
was you said something that kind of triggered I wanted to mention when we the discussion that we just had. But I think one of the real values of what the Q program does, and I'm sure you find this with your SCA courses as well, is it expands your network of people that are seeking to learn.
Hmm.
I mean, I have people on WhatsApp now. I mean, I've got guys in Indo friends, not just guys, friends,
Yeah,
like people that I've, spent days, together and sitting in the back
yeah,
of
yeah,
vehicles, running around all over the place, in Indonesia, in Burundi, a guy working in Hawaii. I mean, there's people all over. And I come up to an issue, or I, come up to something, or hey, I wonder what they do here. I wonder what they do with this. Or, I early in coffee, I often found myself asking the question, where do I go? Like, who do I
mm,
ask?
hmm,
Because
hmm,
there
hmm,
is the sense where I know that's one of your passions, because I know we talked about it before. But, I mean, that was really at the heart of what the center was that I launched with Sucafina, was having that place for people to come to say, I just need to ask this question and I don't know where to go.
hmm,
And so,
hmm.
just to throw that out, that's another, I think, real benefit of these courses, that it builds
Oh
that
yeah.
network, and it opens you up to kind of being able to realize that people don't really know as much as sometimes they purport to know. I'm still on
Hmm.
a journey learning and growing, but there is a free exchange of information that can occur. Okay, sorry, I
Yeah.
I wanted to say that when I was answering your previous question, and I forgot about it.
No, that's
Um,
really good. The perspectives on coffee. And that's a big part of it. Like you have
yeah,
a rich perspective, not just because you're a really intelligent, well studied, well trained, experienced coffee professional, which you are, but you have such a rich perspective because you've been on the ground with farmers, you've processed, you've put in the hours, you've traveled around, and you've done this training, so um tell us
well,
about
and
one of
and
those
yeah,
tell us
and to
about one of
answer your
those
question,
trainings, like
sorry,
in Myanmar or in the Philippines. Yeah, like
yeah.
like
I
that's
didn't mean to
that is the
detract from your
perspective.
question. I just wanted to
No,
to
it's
add
good.
that you triggered it in my mind. But yeah, I mean, and I've done different things. So like in the Philippines, I've gone and I've taught, certification courses. So Q processing. We have a new course. There's a new course within CQI, which is Q cupping essentials. QCE is what we
Hmm.
call it. And so looking at what are the needs of the area, what are the needs of those individuals there, and then whether we either utilize some of the CQI material, and this was the one in DRC specifically, as well as in Myanmar, was through CQI. It was part of their
Mm,
project courses. So a lot of people don't realize, but CQI does quite a bit of development project work across the world. In
mm,
fact, I would say,
hmm,
even Myanmar specialty coffee having the place in the market it has, absolutely is a credit to the unbelievable hard work of the Myanmar producers and people
mm,
there. But CQI was a big part of helping provide training opportunities, market access opportunities, as a part of that project, in conjunction with, USAID and other funding agencies. But so, in the DRC, I worked with a wonderful, wonderful guy, Ephraim from Burundi, and we worked with coffee producers there, and we actually did a Q processing level 2 course, and really focused on helping. It was great. It was overwhelmingly kind of younger generation of coffee producers wanting to produce higher quality, wanting to
mm.
learn more about processing, and so did that course there. And it was incredible. And I would say that those opportunities to step into different situations has taken information and knowledge that, or I would say information that we gain from books, that we gain from courses, and really transforming it into knowledge that makes it something that can be applicable and used. And because it's that combination, in my opinion, it's that combination of information and experience that
Hmm.
really enriches what it is we do. And
Yeah.
when we can have opportunities, and you asked the question, well, I'm just starting off in coffee, how do I gain more experience?
Hmm.
Well,
Hmm.
I mean, the cop out answer is to say, well, wait 20 years, but that's not the way we kind of jumpstart that is to get experiences within different cultures, within different
Right.
areas, and just ask questions. I
Yep.
always tell people this, but fifth grade, my mom comes in for the first 6 weeks meeting with my teacher, as just kind of part of standard procedures, and she walks in, and I'm my mom's only son, kind of a big deal, and the teacher, Mrs. Wallace, I'll never forget, she says, "Mrs. Heinze, we have a problem with your son," which was not really the way to like start off the conversation,
Yeah. Yeah.
but
Good
she
lead
said,
in.
yeah, exactly. Like, on the list of like ways not to start a parent teacher conference, like let's put that one at the top. And she says, Mrs. Heinze, I have a problem with your son. He asked too many questions. And my mom kind of looks at me and looks at Mrs. Wallace and says, so he's making you teach? Which was not, again, not on the list of proper responses.
That
Did
was that
not
was
set me up for
that was a
I would
jab.
not
That's
say that
awesome.
set me up for success that year, but what it did, I mean, from a young, I have been inquisitive, and I always,
Hmm.
and one of the things that I've really done as I've gone into these different areas and been able to travel is to have an attitude of extreme humility and just
Yeah.
wanting to learn, asking questions. You talk about like strength finders tests and other things like that. Learner is a huge part of my makeup. I feel in any context, whether I'm talking to a PhD who's been in coffee for however many decades, who's written the books on this or that, I feel like there's just as much I can learn from that individual as I can from the producer who has a hectare of coffee trees and sells coffee fruit to the local washing station and doesn't own a TV and doesn't have a, smartphone. To me, there
Hmm.
are
Hmm.
opportunities, equal opportunities to learn from those different experiences that I just I feel very honored to be able to have had those experiences, and then to be able to bring those into teaching opportunities wherever I
Hmm.
go, and
Yeah.
sharing those experiences and trying to kind of jumpstart, so to say, people's getting into coffee and their kind of their professional journeys.
Yeah. Yeah. That's good. Um, I I love that story. I've heard that story before. So thanks for throwing that in here. So
Sorry.
everyone can hear it. Yeah, everyone needs to hear it. Uh,
Mrs.
the
Wallace.
fun, Mrs. Wallace. Hi. I hope you're doing well. Um,
Look at me now.
that humility to ask questions is kind of tied to this willingness to constantly challenge what you know. Like,
Oh
why
yeah.
do I do it this way? And could we try it another way? Could we experiment? Could we do something different? But then uh, you're talking about information turning into knowledge. And I think that's so key and critical because it was really hard for me to start a coffee roastery in central China, Wuhan, 2012. Like I I I sent an email and some phone calls to Beijing and to Shanghai. Like there were two roasters that I could find in China, and it was Arabica and it was Ocean Grounds. And so these two guys, I sent them. I was like, "Hey, can you guys help me out?" And they both responded. One, especially more than the other. Uh, I just didn't know, right? But there's so many podcasts, YouTube, books. I mean, we are drowning in information.
Yeah.
Something that the Specialty Coffee Association of Europe did for me when I first started taking my courses, even 10 years ago, it it uh, it took all of this flying information and it landed it
Noise.
well, noise, is it good? Is it bad? I don't know. I'm roasting coffee. People say they like it. I feel like I could have done better. I mean, roasters are plagued by this. I feel like I could have done better. Am I doing it
Yeah.
right? Kind of
Yeah.
uh, doubt or self talk.
Hmm.
And when we take these courses, it pulls them down and says, these are the questions, these are the exercises, your certified foundation. Good work. This is how all the foundation students all over the world have been doing it the last 10 years and are doing it today. You're don't worry about this set of knowledge, information that is now knowledge anymore. Intermediate, boom. Professional, boom. Q grader, boom. And it just gave so much personal confidence so that I could keep on moving forward, so that I didn't have to keep on asking myself, should I have roasted it different? Am I really tasting this in the cup? Uh, is my espresso tasting as good as it should, or is the extraction right? Because otherwise, we just ask those questions all the time when everyone on YouTube or somewhere else has an opinion. Get yourself certified, take the exam, and then stop asking yourself the question and take the next step up, right? So that was so helpful for me. And when people ask, why should I spend $300 or $2,300 or whatever, I say, well, I don't regret a single penny that I paid
Yeah.
on my certification. Like, it
Yeah.
changed me. And
Yeah.
now what am I doing with it? So I love that. I love
And
that
I
you
would
can
just,
do
and I
that
would add
all
that,
over the world.
yeah. And I would just add that like it is absolutely, I think it is money well spent, an investment well spent. I would say that um find somebody. There's so many options out there now in terms of people you can learn from, people you can, study under. I personally am a huge fan of this kind of apprenticeship model that you see in some cultures across the world, where you kind of go and you just learn from people
Mm,
and you just learn from their experiences. And
yeah.
and we can definitely provide opportunities for
Hmm.
information and knowledge share.
Well, Tim, this has been awesome. This is definitely going long form. We're going to start landing the plane.
Cool.
So I think 10, 15 minutes here, I've got a couple ideas. So just like
Cool.
first thing that pops to your
Yep.
mind. And then we've teased some upcoming courses. I'd love to know like how people can get engaged with the center, because um, what you were just saying to me there also, uh, I want to build a community around this coffee playground where we are making each other's lives better. Like, I'm just
Mm.
one guy, but I know that we get transformed through our relationships and through our community. I've had so many people help me along the way. And a big part of me choosing a course was also the uh, the feeling or the confidence I had in my instructor. So
Yeah.
if people want to connect with you, if they want to learn from you, we're gonna share all that. And same thing with me here at How to Coffee Pro. So, are you ready for the speed round?
I'm
We're going to call
ready.
this the speed round.
All
All right.
right.
So, um, people will ask you, you're the professional, what are your top tips for improving my sensory skills?
Smell everything. And I go to markets all the time and just smell fruits, smell
Mm-hmm,
vegetables,
mm-hmm.
and I love it. And I think just being an active consumer of consumables
Whatever
helps
you're
so
putting in
much
your
with
mouth,
sensory.
whatever you're walking around, whatever you're smelling, I think
Yep.
there's a fire. Someone's barbecuing. Just start paying attention, right?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Great. What are you most excited about professionally in the next coming months as we close out the year?
Oh yeah, great question. I've got a lot of some really exciting things coming with the center in terms of courses. We're looking at launching a few new courses. I don't want to mention anything yet because I want to make sure we
Top
I
secret.
don't promise something that I can't deliver on. But and then you mentioned about my grad degree. I'm finishing up my graduate studies, my Master of Agriculture degree with Texas A&M, and in my last semester, I'm doing what I'm really excited about, some value chain assessment and value chain studies in coffee. And I'm really excited about it. Like it's,
Okay.
yeah, I'm pumped. And just being able to start hopefully traveling again and doing courses. I know that it's tough right now with COVID and also just economically for people. But I'm excited about, getting back out there and being able to travel and do some more courses.
Awesome. Awesome. Yes or no? Do you own Bitcoin?
No. Should I own Bitcoin? Yes or no?
should I have bought it 5 years ago in China? Yes. Oh man. What's one of the most delightful? Okay, first, what's one of the unforgettable coffees that you've tasted?
I had one of the Q grader courses. I had a Burundi natural that I still think today was the best coffee I've ever had.
What did it smell or taste like?
Oh, it was a natural. It was fresh fruit, strawberries. It was juicy. It was clean. It was smooth. I mean, it was, and I don't know if it was because of the juxtaposition against what I had previously, but I still to this day remember tasting that coffee.
Yeah. Experience or memory surrounding coffee. What are one of your most joyful kind of moments in coffee? Not just the coffee, but that joyful person or place.
Dang, that's a tough one. There would be two. You said close. I have grown such a deep respect for coffee farmers, for farmers across the world. And I mean, there have been times, countless times, where I've sat around the tea table in, farms and mountaintops across Yunnan, having, coffee and tea and brewing and arguing about brewing. And one of the guys, he would never use a scale. And he was like, no, you don't need a scale. And like, and those for me are such rich. Yeah. I mean, that to me, because coffee is an opportunity to share that together, share life together and share experiences and invite people into just life together. And that's what I really love about coffee. I don't know. Yeah, I could think of several events where that's occurred. But yeah, that would be some of my kind of cherished memories. I mean, I could, share stories about places coffee's taken me and being in environments I thought I would never be in, and walking through a field of poppies and learning how black heroin is extracted from a poppy. I thought I'd never have that experience. I mean, I didn't even know. Not only did I not even think I'd have that experience, I didn't even know that was an experience. Right. And coffee, brought me there. And So,
all right, coffee is opening doors. So I want to. Boom, I'm going to land this plane. I want to open the door to you to come out to Portland and to run a Q course. And as soon as we lock down these details, I'm going to be promoting it. We're going to be reserving seats. When we set up a Q course, we want 6 to 12 students generally, because we're looking to fill 1 or 2 tables. So limited number, right? I'm going to ask you live on television on my computer screen. Could you go out to Ethiopia, to Addis Ababa, and run a Q grader course for us?
Absolutely. And not even, have to think twice about it. That would be a delight. So, yeah, I'm really hopeful that we can make that happen next year.
So, Ethiopia is going to be harvesting their coffee. What do they harvest? Start in November?
Yeah, kind of towards the end of the year, and then in
November, December, and then they kind of move into processing, move into sales. So we're looking at March. We're trying to get some dates on the calendar in March, and we'd love to have a mixed class like you were just talking about. We'd love to have a bunch of Ethiopian growers in half the class, and then bring in our international crowd, right? What else in the center? What are some ways that we could connect with you or start learning? Is it thecenter.coffee or center.coffee?
Yeah, it's thecenter.coffee, and it's
the
English. It's the English spelling, so it's ER, not RE. Yeah, I know. But if you do put RE, I'm fairly confident it'll direct you there.
Buy that up. Get that domain.
That was what we discussed previously. If we haven't bought it, we've already bought it because this was pre-recorded and I jumped on right after this call and got it.
I was going to say, I'm going to get that.
Adam, don't you dare buy it. And the center.coffee, So right now we have a video series that centers around a green coffee poster infographic that we developed. Really cool infographic. That's a free resource. Print it out, hang it on the wall.
Cool.
And
I want to get that. Link it.
Yeah. And then there's a video series, a 12-part video series that talks through those different elements. That's free right now, so go check that out. We have a podcast. I've got 5 episodes, about to release our 5th episode tomorrow, actually, which is Friday, September 3rd.
I feel like I subscribed and I haven't gotten notifications. I need to double check my subscription.
Yeah, well, and we did. We've talked about the potato defect, Brazil frost. The most recent episode was on Café Stenophylla, and then the one on Friday is going to be about the ASIC conference that recently happened 2 months ago. So Center, we officially launched July 16th, so we're only about 6 weeks in. And so right now I've got 3 different courses that I am video editing, content editing, recording, getting things ready. And we're looking forward to hopefully the end of September. We'll have at least one course that will be ready to release, hopefully 2.
Awesome.
So stay tuned.
So for now, we can get some free stuff. We can check out the podcast. These are ways to follow you and connect. Do you have a preferred way to connect? Otherwise, personally?
I mean, I'm on Instagram. I'll drop my handle down in the notes below.
Okay.
Thecenter.coffee. We've got Instagram, Twitter, Facebook.
Great.
I'm on WeChat, but I know that's not as popular here. So I am reachable on WeChat as well and WhatsApp. Unfortunately, personally, I'm not on TikTok or Twitter.
You taking dancing lessons before you get on TikTok?
I am not. And in fact,
do the coffee dance.
We need to like get some kind of coffee TikTok thing trending, right?
No.
And like get people all over the world to no. All right.
I called you my little big brother, not my big little brother, because you are my little brother. You're younger than I am. I'm getting up there. And but I look up to you because you're smart and you are tech savvy. So I'm gonna trust that you can figure out how to do the TikTok game, and then I'll just kind of watch what you do. So
I was living in China. I was living in China when a lot of that stuff really took off, and so I was like neck deep into WeChat, and I come back to the US and it's like TikTok and Twitter. And
I'm going to be promoting our courses as they get going, so people can jump on my email list, and I'll be sending updates there about those Q courses that we want to pull together. And then I think I also want to give away a period of promotion here when this video releases for a sensory course discount, so that people can get started with Foundation SCA Sensory online. They can get some confidence and some skills as they move into maybe a Q with you, or maybe further coursework with other trainers anywhere in the world who are awesome, and the communities that they can join. Yeah, Tim, did we cover everything here?
I think we did. I think we did pretty well, actually.
Yeah. Thanks, buddy. Talk to you later.
Thanks, man. Cheers.